Welcome to Clothing Culture. I'm Emily Lane.
I'm Bret Schnitker.
We speak with experts where we explore the global dynamics that shape trends in the fashion industry.
Brought to you by Stars Design Group, a global production and design house with over 30 years of industry experience.
Welcome back to another episode of Clothing Culture. Today, I'm going to be talking with Bret Schnitker on fast turn. So here we are, located in the United States, where we live in what we commonly call a microwave society. We want things fast. We want things now. Amazon, we get it next day. We order from Whole Foods, we get it in 2 hours. And inevitably, Bret, when we are talking with clients, the conversation of fast turn always comes up. Why do you think this is, beyond, of course, us being in this microwave society?
I think a number of reasons. I think the further that you're planning and designing things from the point that you're delivering them to your consumer, whether it's direct to consumer and brick and mortar models or whatever else, the more time things have to change. I mean, we look at, we're in the middle of COVID. And I think in some cases during this past year, stuff that was produced, designed, and developed pre-COVID, there was this radical change during COVID to everything we did.
Right.
We lived at home. We
Cozy
wanted to
wear.
be comfortable,
Yeah.
right? Even if, some people didn't even wear pants, but, we've heard some crazy stories about that. But I think, people want to be comfortable. Housewear business exploded. This whole kind of leisure comfort kind of class of clothing really exploded. And if we were able to react to business in a much quicker way from when conditions occurred, and it could be like COVID, or it could be simply something like we've designed a number of products and there's a particular color, SKU, style that has
becomes
a lot
all
of demand,
the rage, yeah.
then we can chase that demand. I think the first thing I learned when I was in business years ago as a buyer in a department store or a retail specialty chain, was that you either overbuy or underbuy. You never buy the right amount.
Right.
It's kind of an impossibility. You're either going to overproject or under. And I think in a world where you can react to demand multiple times, let's say, within a season or the life cycle of a garment, you can kind of buy more in line with the demand and therefore, on a financial basis, reduce markdowns and liability, on a global basis, reduce landfills, from bad decisions. So, I think that is at its heart one of the real positives of quick turn, certainly.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about the expectation of fast turn? I mean, I understand what that means. When you say fast turn, I get it. Right. We want it fast.
Yeah.
But in the industry, how fast is fast?
Good question. It's funny. I think people have different perceptions. I think the more experienced you are in the industry, you kind of understand what can and can't happen. I mean, traditionally, a traditional manufacturing cycle, 90 to 120 days production, is sort of a norm that people kind of are used to hearing from manufacturing lead times overseas, regardless of country. And then depending on where that country is positioned relative to where the ultimate destination or product is, you can be anywhere from 30 days to over 70 days, and that would be boat lead times, customs clearance, perhaps trucking domestically, et cetera. So when you add those two together, that's a traditional cycle. Fast lead times, these intentional expediting of programs can move those 90 to 120 days to sometimes, in some categories, 45 to 60 days production. And if you move it from boat to air, you can go from these longer lead times I mentioned to 7 to 15 days. Maybe, if you get quick clearance, it could be quicker than that by air. So it's a pretty radical difference in timing.
Right. Oh my gosh. So many in the industry know, and that Zara is kind of the entity that really made this model work.
Sure.
What what is some of the magic that Zara is doing to make this model, so successful for them?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had a lot of conversations from people all over the industry, and they're always fascinated with how has Zara managed to do this, And it's really, honestly, it's not magic. It really is preparation and intention. The way that they build their pipeline, the way that they develop product, make decisions internally at Zara, partner with groups, pre-plan fabrication, pre-approve styling, set certain expectation for some deficiencies that might occur because of fast turn. All of these are kind of built into that model. And it's not something you can just go do. You have to really have planning. I mean, to have quick turn within cut, make, and trim, the manufacturing of the garment part in the CM factories, you really have to own lines, position yourself so those lines are always open and ready to produce goods for your particular needs. And those steps are the magic to creating fast turn.
I would think volume has got to be playing a role in that as well.
Certainly volume does. Volume can also create complications with fast turn because if you have a lot of units, you've got to allocate more lines to them. More units take longer production time depending on the capacities. But volume in terms of sales volume at the store level benefits fast turn. Because what happens within fast turn environments is you might be the first to market in terms of a style. You might be reacting to certain things, but you also make mistakes within fast turn. Specs can be deficient, quality can be less than, you can miss the mark on color. And one of the benefits that Zara has created within that model is because of this unbelievable demand that occurs at the retail level, if a mistake comes through, it's flushed through the system and vanishes almost overnight.
Short memory, right?
Yeah, and they have the ability to move that out and have it disappear. In traditional retailing environments where turns, we call turns, or weeks of supply, the ability for an entity to go through numbers in a certain allocated time, they're on the lower side today. They don't turn as fast as they have in years past when consumerism for a particular brand might have been more elevated or that, a garment experience could have been a little more robust in years past than they are. You have those mistakes that occur, your inventory continues to build up and build up and build up. So these are all things that you really have to think through when you're dealing with these kind of fast reaction times, fast delivery cycles to your consumer.
Yeah, I think intention here is really key, as you mentioned, because those costs can really build up with bad decisions.
Sure, right.
So I think intention can also help in, if we're talking to people who are, realize maybe fast turn isn't a real model that they can fully adopt, but there are things that people can do to speed up their production cycle.
Absolutely.
And I think intention is probably part of that. But I'd love for you to dive into some of those things that companies can do to shorten that cycle.
Sure. I mean, a lot of this comes with understanding, like you mentioned, these key components to expedite delivery. And so, in our industry, there's a lot of base fabrications that we use across a number of different programs. And a lot of those base fabrications are constantly running through mills throughout the world. And some mills take bigger positions on those fabrications than others. And being able to dialogue with mills to utilize fabrics that are constantly running, using a fabric that comes out of Grage consistently every week in large volumes that you can pull away from and utilize for your production can sometimes save 3 to 4 weeks, in weaving or knitting. I mean, having the fabric ready to go, you've just got to now go through the dyeing aspects of that production. So, that's a really big key component in terms of that. Making decisions prior to the season on production versus putting some of those approval processes as part of your production cycle can also speed up production. I've talked to a number of people and saying, look, if you can set up your development and design phase prior to the point that you're writing the PO. Go down the path and do your approvals and lab dips, strike-offs on patterns, fabric decisions, specifications, garment fit samples. If those can all be done before that season, and then when the season comes around and you're ready to do it, you start selecting items within the assortment that you ultimately wish to go with, and then you write the PO, the factory is not waiting on approvals within that particular cycle. All the approvals have been made. So it's basically, hey, just go. And that can speed up production, because a lot of things that drag production is when you, let's say you put a fit sample or a styling approval sample or a lab dip or a coloration as part of your production cycle. If a color doesn't come through right and you reject it, you got a week or two before you get that color redone, and that can slow dyeing of fabric. So factories overseas, because the penalties that organizations have put in place to make sure that delivery happens on time, they're going to look at your process and say, wow, this is part of that production process. We might have an issue getting an approval. I'm going to pad my delivery cycle. Where with good long-term relationships and consistent decision-making of having these things approved prior to the process, a factory will have more confidence saying, look, I can allocate X amount of lines for this. It's going to take me, I can make X amount of units a day, and you write and confirm the order. Since we have everything approved already, I can move this much quicker than what I would be normally quoting as a delivery cycle.
You talked about, the fabric side of things. It seems like that is one of those spots that can really, really trim things down for you. I've also heard you talk to clients about buying fabric in more bulk.
Sure. That generally, I would say, on a predominant basis, if you have a core-based category of a program that you consistently run, let's say a khaki stretch bottom program that you're always in stock on. Those are situations that I think make a hell of a lot of sense on blocking and storing fabrication, a month's worth of demand in advance, because that fabric is then not only woven or knitted or whatever, depending on the category, but it's also dyed in the colors. And you can stage it. Certain parts of that fabric can be woven or knitted and in grayish state, which is prepared to be dyed. And then there are also portions of that fabric, a certain amount of meterage that can already be dyed and stored in the facility along with trim, sewing thread, and all of that, so that they can call out rush demand and everything is there. And if the line is open or you have secured the line, they can immediately put that line on and produce those garments much, much faster, for sure.
I kind of want to go back a little bit to talking about the fast turn, the true fast turn model. And are there some kind of misconceptions that people have about what it takes to do this model the right way?
Certainly, there are misconceptions. And I think we've talked about a few of those. I think that they think they can go through the process and a factory just makes things faster. You can find faster mills to produce fabrications. I think 9 times out of 10, that's a fallacy of thinking. As you mentioned before, this is something that is a kind of an intentional process in an organization to be able to make sure that you get fast turning, you're successful at fast turn.
Okay. So as you're talking about, the factories and the processes that you can implement to speed things up or go faster, what about technology? There's got to be some great options out there that can help speed things along.
Oh, 100%. I mean, in the case of the company here, we've embraced 3D design technology for now 9 years.
Right.
And that is rapidly evolving in our industry. I think, one of the reports a while ago was less than 2% of the industry is using this. And I think when you can be comfortable with the fact that you can design in 3D, get a very, very realistic looking image of the garment, you have confidence in playing that in. And in our case, each one of these 3D images are built from the pattern file forward. So in essence, you can make decisions on fit, pattern, all of that as part of that design stage. And I think, any of us who've gone through product development design knows that can be a very, very long process if you do it the traditional way.
Yeah, I was amazed. Recently we had a design project that we did, and it's as tradition in 3D first. And I thought it was so fascinating to see the dress on the avatar walking around. And very quickly we saw that there was a little bit of a fit problem, right?
Right.
And it was just so wonderful to just very easily make those modifications and
address the issue.
As opposed to the other method, which would be you would go to a sample phase, right?
Yeah, you could wait 30, 45 days, get your pattern, find your fabric, get a sample, bring it in, put it on a mannequin, put it on a fit model, and go, oh, that's a problem.
Oh, right.
When
now
we could identify the problem in minutes, not a number of days.
Right.
Yeah.
What are some other technology solutions out there?
Certainly when we look at, there's a number of things that are going on in the industry in terms of support functions within manufacturing in lines. Machinery that moves at a much faster pace than humans. Automating certain segments of production can speed up production, most certainly. Within a factory, there's a lot of conversation about SAMs, it's production allocations for how quickly a certain process takes. And certainly the less time it takes, the more profitable and the more efficient you'll be. The more time it takes, the less profitable and less efficient you'll be. So really studying that line and putting in modern equipment to substitute for maybe a sewer that might be slower can also speed up production.
We often talk about how long ago the U.S. abandoned the manufacturing in apparel, and
not entirely, but it's not a big segment. It's not
a big part of our economy.
Yeah.
And as we're talking about technology, and us being St. Louis based, having a lot of technology forward companies locally as well as all throughout the United States, it makes me think: is there a play here for the United States to become a bigger part of the game? With this technology angle? Sure.
I mean, one of the big hindrances, obviously, in a lot of manufacturing sectors in the U.S. versus other places in the world are our labor costs. And if your labor costs are extremely high, there are a number of people that would love to make goods in America, and there are a lot of consumers that would love to buy American. And then when you show them the price tag that would exist on that, there's a lot less of those people that want to purchase that. This is where technology can help, and what the term has really been a lot more prevalent lately, called nearshoring.
Right.
Returning manufacturing to the U.S., and certainly within the apparel business, certain technologies have been really interesting. One of those, we're an investor in here in St. Louis, called Evolution Manufacturing, and they're utilizing stole knitting technology, which is whole garment knitting, where you basically program a whole bank of machines and they'll all knit the garment from beginning to end. You basically, in theory, you snip a thread, you throw on a label, throw it through some washing and finishing, put it in packaging, and you're ready to go. You're replacing a lot of manual labor in that, and there might be people that will be, wow, we're not employing enough people. But in an industry that doesn't exist to the levels that it could be, you would actually, if you really think about this long term, bringing technology in that replaces expensive manpower, ultimately, as that business sector grows, and it can grow exponentially based upon demand, and we really can export some of that production internationally because of American made, you're going to employ a ton of people, but it's just going to be differently than you might have employed them years ago. You're going to employ designers that understand how to, work with those machines and design, the garments themselves. You're going to have technicians. You're going to have people that are servicing the machines. So there are a lot of opportunities for employment that they might not necessarily been in the knitting or linking lines like years past, like in this situation, but they'll be employed in other areas, and it'll create a robust economy. It'll allow us for quick turn, reacting to demand. That technology can knit one sweater in a particular size, and you quickly program it. It'll knit another sweater, another size.
No
so
variance from garment to garment either.
No, there's a wonderful sustainable story. There's no wastage. There's no loss. There's really very few defects. It's an amazing kind of place we're at today, where there are two leading companies right now working on whole garment knitting, and that's Stoll and Shimaseki. And there's probably pros and cons to each of them to different degrees, but it's exciting that over the years they've invested so much into this technology. And if you can layer onto that, within other sectors of our apparel industry, digital printing, and if there's situations we're seeing where there's 3D printing capabilities, and I think that's going to evolve along the path where we might be 3D printing garments in the future. So there's a really exciting opportunity for evolution and nearshoring in America today that never existed before.
I think that seems like a pretty exciting opportunity for schools in the fashion industry to be thinking about a path forward of, embracing technology and making sure that those that are coming into the industry are at least familiar with where it's going and getting their hands in it. Because like you said, as nearshoring and technology comes into place, that can provide a different kind of opportunity for people in this industry.
Yeah, you mentioned opportunity. I agree it's an opportunity, but it's also a challenge. Because with technology, you don't have teachers that have a long degree of experience in that new technology to actually teach it. So, it's an interesting dynamic because technology moves so quickly. How do you get people to teach it? And it's certainly a huge opportunity in our segment, and I think it's going to be much, much larger. It's just how do we prepare, various educational institutions on teaching this new technology and staying ahead of it. There's a number of schools throughout the United States that are embracing this, thankfully, and I think they're going to be the ones to look at in the future for future employees in this sector.
Do you see any other kind of core challenges, kind of going back a little bit to the fast turn or speeding things up? Do you see any other challenges that people should be aware of as they're considering this option?
Yeah, I think, whenever we talk about fast decisions in general in our lives, fast decisions sometimes come with repercussions, and fast turn is no exception. If you're making decisions quickly on design, you might forget some key things that should happen within design. Certainly, rushed manufacturing can be fraught with quality issues. You're not providing enough time to think through, various garments. You're going to end up with some issues there. And certainly, there is a number of people and steps in manufacturing that a lot of people aren't aware of. And if one of those break down in the process in fast turn.
Domino effect, right?
Yeah. Fast turn doesn't happen, and then the factory's in deep trouble, and the client who expected it, will be disappointed, and there could be some cancellations or certainly loss of revenue in retail. And so understanding that there's a certain percentage in all fast turn production decisions, even Zara, I am sure, has a certain percentage saying, hey, this percentage isn't going to make it.
Yeah.
We've allocated for this fast turn, but we're buying in such abundance that if these don't make it, we're going to slide these in their place, because I think there's probably a decent percentage of those that just don't make it.
Do you have any thoughts as to what that percentage might be?
I wouldn't guess.
Well, thank you, Bret, for this fascinating conversation, this very fast and fascinating conversation on how to speed up production, fast turn, a topic we touch on almost every day in conversation with our clients. If anyone out there has questions on this topic, feel free to reach out on our website at Stars Design Group. Looking forward to seeing you once again on a future episode of Clothing Culture.